Hi, everybody. We're big, we're bad, we're back with another in our episode of Ultimate Mixing on seven different songs. This week, we're going to be concentrating on guitars. So if you haven't already, please subscribe, hit the notifications bell, you'll be notified. And of course, if you go to producelikeapro.com, you can sign up for the email list and get a whole bunch of free goodies. So the first of these is actually a live mixing from a Dick Wagner charity concert that I mixed for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. It's actually a course that you can buy where all the proceeds go to, you guessed it, St. Jude's charity. This one is me mixing hybrid. It's acoustic guitars on this particular episode, and you're going to see how I process it in the box, but also what I do on the console. So stay tuned. Okay, so what are we doing on all of these acoustics? It's pretty similar. On this pair, these two rhythms here, there's the left, there's the right. So the left-hand one, so it has some mid-range boost, about 700. Which makes sense because it's kind of bright, a little splatty. Some low cut coming from the analog channel, and a little high lift there, a little low cut on that EQ as well. Now this is actually my favorite compressor for acoustic guitars, the Renaissance Axe. For some reason, it just always works really well on acoustics. And you see it's quite aggressive. Getting not massively aggressive, but 2 to 3 dBs worth of gain reduction. And then believe it or not, there's quite a lot of the RVox, which is giving me level. Now, bear in mind, when I mix, I am mixing listening to the whole track. So I don't just like mix a sound, obviously, like we're hearing in isolation. I'll mix the guitar sound, get it to sound good, drop it in, as we go. And I'll add things, based on listening to a full mix. Maybe I'll go and sit down, I'll listen to the mix. I'm pretty happy with what I'm hearing through the speakers. And then I'll be like, no, I need that guitar to be just a little bit more aggressive. So the RVox was probably added after one of those listenings, because I wouldn't naturally put an RVox on the end unless I really did want to trash it out and make it. Listen to the amount of girth on that. If I turn that down, if I bypass it, I should say, on, it really brings it down. Super dynamic there. So not only does that reduce the dynamics, it also kind of adds some grit to it. It's nasty, but I like it, and it drives the song. Okay, next up, the other guitar. I really like this tone. So, low roll-off. There's a ton of it there we don't need. Analog channel again, just doing some low roll-off. And look, an RVox as well. So probably what happened, I was mixing and I wanted both those acoustics to just be fuller, because an RVox seems to always bring up the lows. It really does. Like if I put it on a vocal, for instance, it brings up some of that low end on the vocal. That's our two main rhythm acoustics. Now on Dick's lead parts here, because it's nuts, he's using a multi-effects unit. I've gone quite nuts. I've pulled some 400 out, got some 10K with the API, the Waves API there. I've then got a little bit of a low roll off there. Aggressive, again, the Renaissance Axe. And then I'm limiting it. Because it's a lead part, listen to it. Somewhere in your heart, love is running wild. You can change the world. So it's underneath Trini's part there, where Trini's singing. Muting it. Love is running wild. So it's really got to cut through. So I'm being super aggressive with it. If you hear it on its own, it's really destroyed. I mean, it's compressed, it's limited, There's 6, 7, 8 dBs worth going on there, but listen to it in the track. I love that little Dick Wagner riff at the end there. Fantastic stuff. And then, of course, the other little lead part here shares exactly the same API. Oh, actually, this has got 3 and 10K. Did we do that on the other one? No, we only did 400 cut. So this one's actually got a 3K boost. Let's have a listen to it in the track. So it's like little question, and then it's got this answer. It's just great. Great little subtleties. I mean, it's wonderful to be able to mix and, hear beautiful musicians' performances. So let's go and check out the acoustic guitar on the console. So if I press play on the acoustics, remember all the acoustics are folded into this. And the acoustics are pretty hot in this mix because they give it a swing and they give it an upbeat feel. I mean, this is a song of hope. It's a beautiful song. It's a charity song. So what have I got? Nothing really going on the low end there. It's already being cut up here. It's high passed at about 100. There's some 9K, 10K boost, some 7K boost. And that's about it, really. It's really just a case of bringing up the brightness of the high end. But what is interesting about this, these are the first channels we've seen do this, it's EQ out. So what that means is the high end boost is pushing into the compression. So let's just say the compressor's barely happening. Well, when the EQ boost comes in, it makes it louder in the high end and that gets compressed back. So if I take that out, it just adds a sparkle to it without them getting too loud and too aggressive. Like I said, they're a bit trashy, these acoustics, but I like that, and that's what Dick wanted. He wanted it to be just a little bit more aggressive. He was a rock and roll guy after all. Next up is a recent course with the rather wonderful Mr. Nick Launay. Nick, it's pretty cool, let's be honest. Nick has worked with everybody. Public Image Limited, Kate Bush, Nick Cave, all kinds of incredible artists. And in this clip, he works with the band Starcrawler. Starcrawler are a very, very cool indie rock band, sort of glam punk, if you were, from Los Angeles. Nick takes 4 different microphones and blends them together to create the guitar sound. He brightens them, but he also removes any nasty frequencies with EQ.
I think what we should do, let me just try this. We just brighten up the low, the murky one, because it's a bit murky. I might actually brighten this one up as well. Better. Do you hear it brighter than that still, or
maybe just like less thick, like more like guitar one side, bass one side, like kind of Ramones?
Oh, okay. Yeah, it is very thick.
Yeah.
Probably what I'd do just is knock out a bit of. I usually use these EQs That one's got the brightness is good, but it's got a nastiness to it. That. Bit better. Do you want it brighter than that still, or more? Or is that getting there?
Get in there.
Cool. Right, just there's a sort of sometimes I find that sometimes there's odd nasty frequencies in guitars that's going.
Yeah, it's like a higher.
Yeah. Like a.
Yeah.
So I use this equalizer is just comes standard with Pro Tools, and a lot of people don't use it because it's not a boutique thing, but actually it works very well as a notch filter, and a notch filter is something that you can get right in there, very narrow, and find a frequency and boost it or subtract it. So this is what I do. So that whistling sound is not very nice. So you found it by doing that, and then so when I switch it on and off, you can hear this nasty. I also hear another one that's annoying down here somewhere. That's just sort of harmonic. So after a while of doing this, your ear hears things, and you can zoom in there and get rid of them. And sometimes it makes everything sound so much clearer, which is great. But also sometimes these nasty frequencies are the character of it. So you've got to be a bit careful not to go too crazy. But, so I hear one more in there sticking out. And because I've done this for so long, I can sort of guess that it is there. It's like a game. There it is. And they tend to happen a lot with guitar amps because there's a lot of distortion, and they're sort of harmonics that ring out. And different guitars have different ones, so you can. So in a way, I'm not really adding frequencies, I'm just pulling out nasty ones. And if I switch it in and out, the whole thing. So that, when we couple it with the other microphones on the amp, it should sound like this.
Next, we have the rather wonderful Mr. Clay Blair, who did a course on recording like the Beatles. He went back in and used some of the same equipment that the Beatles did and did the medley from Abbey Road. In this episode, he shows us the settings he used on the electric and acoustic guitars to recreate the Abbey Road sound, using the Waves Abbey Road plugins.
So I'll put the depth up on the wow and flutter. You're going to hear. Now, makes a pretty cool vibrato, right? So, and slow it way down. It's pretty great. I use it on guitars all the time for like a tremolo effect or sometimes a vocal. Noise level, it's pretty substantial. I usually leave these off unless I am going for that kind of thing. Otherwise, if you want it to kind of be realistic, you could leave it at 0. I leave the saturation down. So what the saturation knob is really is adding to whatever overdrive you're getting from this plug-in. When you're hitting it harder, the saturation just adds more. So, you know, if we're hitting this, that's supposed to be tube saturation because this is a tube tape machine. So you hear that little. So I believe what that is we're hitting this guy a little hard. That's way better. So again, like I was saying earlier, gain staging your TG channels is essential to having a pleasant time without distortion, or if you like distortion. So going back to this guy, the way to engage the tape delay is just to turn this knob. So got a little chamber on it. So if you go to slap, we're just going to go a simple slap level. So 0 dB is going to be as loud as your source signal. Most of the time, a little bit too much. I probably take it down like 8 or 10 dB. That's a good place to leave it. You have a high pass and a low pass here. Slap is 1 repeat. Feedback, we're in another world here. You know, as many repeats as you want. So you can hear that kind of tappy sound. That's with the low and the high pass engaged. I've left these kind of open. I didn't really engage them that much. Just kind of down very low and up very high. So I'm going to play just the top of this tune here with the compression bypassed, and actually I'm using the limiter, and then we're going to listen to it with the limiter in and see what the difference is. Sounds pretty good. Let's try it with the limiter. It's so dirty. It's nice and dirty. Let's try it with the compressor side of it. So compressor sounds cool, but I think the limiter is more of the effect. If you look at my EQ here, I have everything cranked. So bass on 6, got the presence at 6.5, boosted at 10. We got the treble, which I believe the treble is on these, I believe it's 5K or 10K. This is at 7. So that's with the EQ in. Let's try it with the EQ out. Let's hear it without again. It's so different. So this EQ is pretty awesome. And you're going to see as I go through a couple of these tracks that there's a lot of this going on. I'm boosting a lot of stuff.
Now we have our good friend, Mr. F. Reid Shippen. Reid is one of the most, if possibly arguably, the most successful mixers in Nashville, particularly in country. Whenever I look at the top 40, he's usually got 4, 5, or 6 songs at once in the charts. This is a course where he mixed a Nashville singer-songwriter. And Reid takes us through his hybrid mix of that songwriter, Eric Parsley. The track is Under Your Spell.
I love the way SSL EQs sound on guitars. So I use SSL EQs on guitars. I also love the way LA3As sound on guitars. So I run almost all of my electrics through 2 channels of SSL with an LA3A on the insert. Here's the guitar. And if we take all of this stuff off, again, tons of gain, but Boog's guitar sounds great. And maybe I shouldn't have fucked with it. I should have just turned it up, but I fucked with it. So I send the guitar out through SSL. And what this does is it gives me EQ and compression. And on this, usually, almost always on guitars, you end up adding a little bit of 7K. I'm reasonably certain I stole that from CLA. And I push the EQ into the LA3As, where we get a fair amount of gain from it. So again, this will get printed every single time. So the setting that's on here right now is probably not it's definitely not what I ended up using on the song. I'll get the guitar sound that I want, kind of like when you're tracking, and then I'll just print it to Pro Tools. And if I need to go back and change it later, I'll just start from scratch, usually. So let's see what else we did with that. I actually had a LA3A that at one point was getting a little bit noisy. So I must have thrown this RX denoiser on the guitar bus and just let it take the noise out. Probably because we were just too busy to fix the LA3A at that point. That's why that's on there. This adds a little bit of, just a little bit of hair, tiny bit. I love the way that this can just kind of salt in a little bit of character. And again, all of this is post-processing, so I can bounce my SSL insert down and I can just leave my plugins so I can mess with them later. This is a really cool plugin. This is kind of a guitar secret weapon for me. All it does is widen stuff a little bit, and it has this horribly named thing called shred, which I don't know what that means. But it puts a nice, low-mid kind of shape into guitars. So sometimes I'll have this all the way here, sometimes I'll have it off. It doesn't matter. But I love the way this plugin moves guitars outside of the speakers a little bit. And it's subtle, but it kind of wakes them up. And then let's see what else we're using on this one. I wanted a little bit of low-end character. This was the guitars that we cut with the ribbon mic. When anything you cut with an old RCA is going to be rounded off, so a lot of times I'll end up doing this later. Just obviously adding a little bit of mid-range, a little bit of low-end, not much at all. But it seems to wake up the bottom end on this thing. And then the famous Helios plugin. What are we doing on this? Oh, this is just the Helios trick. So when UAD did this plugin, the old Helios modules, they sent it to, I believe, Richard Dodd for evaluation. And, Richard, of course, because he's brilliant, just figured out that they didn't accurately model one thing. And what the thing was is this knob right here, the bass knob, will change the low frequency response of the signal even when you don't turn up the gain. So a lot of times on guitar, I'll just use this to add a really nice low-end character to the guitars, but as you can see, there's no gain on anything else in this channel. I'm turning the output up a little bit. But this makes, I think, a huge difference in some guitars. And, especially in a song like this where there's one electric and that's it. And as you can see, with the exception of the drums that I had to replace, there are no edits in any of this stuff. We didn't go in and fix anything. It is literally just live off the floor. So, let's see. Electrics are also skipping the SSL on this song. Again, I'm not sure why. Maybe it just didn't sound right, or maybe I just forgot, or whatever. But they're going through the dangerous. We'll see. This is going to change because when we go to the actual mix, you'll see a bunch of stuff that I've probably done differently. But this is, as I'm setting stuff up, this is what would come up on my desk.
And now we have the rather wonderful and rather lovely Mr. Bob Horn. Bob is one of my favorite mixers because he really knows how to control the mix in a very modern way. Have you noticed when you listen to like modern radio, everything is like super controlled. There's no S's and T's, nothing ripping off your head. It's really, really beautiful. You can crank up a track on a great modern mix and know that you're going to hear something incredibly balanced. Well, Bob Horn is one of those mixers. And this excerpt he mixes in real time it's a pop R&B track by Uku Sylvestre, and he walks us through his processing and a lot of the why he's doing what he does to get the acoustic guitar to sound the way he wants it to sound.
Okay, so we're going to dive right in. I'm going to start with the main guitar in the song. It's kind of the main instrument throughout the verses and most of the sections, so we're going to get a sound on that and then kind of build from there. Okay, so I started with compression on these guitars. I just wanted to get more of a plucky sound, more of an attack out of it. So I chose a McDSP CB101 with a 20 millisecond attack and a 70 millisecond release. And just those alone, let's do an AB. You can hear how the plucking of the guitar is harder, and that's what I want to go for. That way they can kind of reach out from the back, not the back of the mix, but that way they don't have to be as forward, and they can kind of cut through. And then to accentuate that even more, I'm using this XLN Audio drum shaper, which may not be that widely known of a plugin, but it's really good. It's one of my favorite transient shapers. I'm just using the bus setting, and it's made for drums, but it works on so many things. But the bus setting has this presence knob, and I'm just boosting a little bit of attack, leaving the sustain alone, and then I'm turning up this presence. So check out the difference when I add this. And then finally, I just want to clean up the lows of the guitar and get a little more attack on the high end. So I'm adding this Pro Q2. Now, once we get into the rest of the mix and we get the bass in and the drums and the vocals, this shelf up here and this low frequency cut down here, we can decide exactly how much of those that we want, how much gain, boosting, and cutting we want on those. So we can basically just adjust these. So if we want it warmer on the top and a little more thick, we can do that. Or if we want to thin it out a little and brighten it, we'll be able to do that as well. So we just kind of start with a happy medium with that. You might have noticed with all the processing, it's bringing up the slides of the hands touching the strings in between notes. So, but some of those slides kind of happen in the notes as well. So we can't do anything like de-essing, and they're pretty exposed guitars, especially the intro. That's the only thing that's happening. So we can't really do volume dips either. So we're actually going to try Isotope RX and see if we can get rid of them with that. So we will do that and then come back and see if that worked. Last thing that I did for the moment on the guitars is add a little bit of space, this Eventide SP 2016 stereo room. Just to give them a little bit of dimension and not be so flat. I don't know how much of that we want yet until we get some other things going, but that's a good starting point.
Now we have Mr. Ulrich Wild, where he mixed Static X. Now, having only received guitar DIs, Ulrich uses his own impulse responses to create the sound of this track by Static X. Then he applies EQ afterwards to carve out space for the bass guitar.
So that's the main chorus guitar bed, the rhythm guitars. One fun thing to do is to turn something off in the mix to see what kind of space it filled and what you're missing when it's gone. We used this plugin because we were given DI tracks. Now, as you can see, I tried a host of different plugins. This guy here is Fortin. This guy here is, that was the nameless, and we have this guy. Now, these are amazing plugins, and they were used on other songs. Same thing with the Helix. Pretty much what happened is I ended up having a guitar strip, if you will, that had all these guys in there, and I would, depending on the player, I would drag these around from song to song, from track to track, and depending on who played guitar, use these different guys in there. So let's have a quick exploration of what these fellas do here. This one ended up sounding like this. Not bad, but a little too controlled. Pretty cool. Not quite gainy enough, but this one's the one that ended up winning out. So, obviously you can tweak these to your heart's content, and well, you should when you play around with these things. But, it does come down to who plays these tracks and how they're being played, and the riff. You want to accommodate the riff. Here we are with the this plugin, this PRS plugin from Waves. You can load your own IRs into this thing, which is really nice. The ones that we're using here are their own built-in ones, and to break things up, to change things up on this track here, on this stereo pair, over here, this is Koichi's guitar track, playing along with him, with Zero. For Koichi, we used IRs that I actually made myself. The guitar sounds are slightly different from one another. Together they sound real nice and thick, and in the mix, it's unmistakably Static X. With this guy here, we liven it a little bit up, a little bit with just a little high end, and took out scooped just a little bit of annoying. A little bit of that. Took that out a little bit. As to not to step on some of the other stuff. We'll get into that a bit more. See all that woofiness? Took some of that out to make some room for the bass. And to compensate for taking that out, we add a little bit of low end at the very bottom. If you listen to this guitar track with this bass track, I'm just boosting this frequency that I was taking out to show you how that's stepping on the bass. And by carving this out, we're making room for the bass.
Now, this is a course I did a few years ago now. It's one of my favorite. I spent 3 days, not solid days, but like 2 or 3 hours a day for 3 days, mixing a song completely in the box. So here I mixed using almost entirely stock plugins, Pro Tools plugins. And I set up reverbs and compressed the reverbs and did some gritty sort of in-your-face guitar that I felt sounded too nice. And I added a Sans amp. So check this out. It's kind of a good guitar sound because it's just a 57 shoved on the front of the amp. You know, I think all I would really honestly do, and this can use any EQ to do this, any EQ. I'll go to the bog standard free, comes with Avid, Pro Tools 1. And I'm just going to do the obvious things. I'm going to high pass. So I'm going to come up, I don't know, maybe 100-ish. Like this, get out of the way of the bass. It's not making a huge amount of difference, a little bit. And then I'm gonna low pass. I don't need anything above 8, 9, 10. But I might get more aggressive up there. See, this is a very compressed because it's completely distorted. So if I go here. See, what I want to do is a couple of things here. So like, there's a cool guitar sound. I like it. It's a little brighter. I got rid of some of the lows that were just in the way, that were muddy. I didn't do a huge amount to it. But what can I do to it? Well, let's create a mono reverb. Shorter. Nine, strangely enough. It's just him down. So what have I done? I've got the guitar pan mainly to the left, the reverb mainly to the right. Cool. Now, Robert's amp was actually in a separate room, so there's no bleed. But I'm going to pan him somewhat to the right. It's kind of, you know, almost far to the right. And I'm going to take that same reverb setting and go over here. And guess what else I'm going to do? I'm going to pan it the opposite way. I'm going to first of all just copy the same EQ across. You know what's good about that? They now inhabit the same space. They've got the same EQ. But they're very, very different sounding guitars at first. Pretty even. Look, here's my master bus. Because I had to bring the Z guitar down. Immediately starting to sound like a mix. Very, very straightforward. Not rocket science going on here. Another thing we could do actually is put a little compression after the verb. We can also do it before, but I'm going to do it after. Cool. You know what? That's too sweet. That's part of the problem. I'm also going to put that compressor on this reverb. Now let's listen. That's better. That's too sweet. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to come down here on the sound field, the harmonic. It's great. It's really good. It's amazing just how little you have to do when you just get the balances right. Okay, so on the second verse, let's find the top of the... So let's bring that down. Again, I'm going to come down like a dB. So, and then go to the front of the pre-chorus and then come down on the verse like another dB. Cool. So I hope you enjoyed that. Please check out the other videos in the series. There'll be a link below. Please leave us some comments and questions below. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. Go to Produce Like a Pro, sign up for the email list, and get a whole bunch of free goodies. And have a marvelous time recording and mixing. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, adio, tschüss, goodbye.